Hey guys, so you know I love using tilt-shift perspective control lenses. I'm going to put links here at the end to the other videos I've done on the Canon 24mm tilt-shift lens. And I'm always looking for other new options. So I was very excited to see that Laowa made a 20mm shift lens. And they were nice enough to send me a loaner copy for me to do a review and send them some sample images and check out. And specifically compare it to the Canon 24mm tilt-shift lens. So I've got it in my hand here. I'm in the shadow of the Fire Island Lighthouse. We're going to take some sample images. We're going to do some different things comparing it to the 24mm Canon lens. Right off the bat, just the build itself, it's really a solidly built lens. It looks very similar to the Canon tilt-shift lens in size and weight, just a little bit of a different layout. It comes with a lens hood that you can rotate depending on if the hood is getting into your image. You can rotate it or you can just take it off entirely. So it's a shift lens, not a tilt lens, so it only shifts for perspective control. It doesn't tilt to change the depth of field, which is fine if you're using it for that. The lens is all manual. There's an aperture ring on here that you can set the aperture manually. The focus is manual. Everything's manual in here. There's very nice dials and displays where you can really control everything on here. And you really don't need autofocus when you're using a lens like this. A lens like this you're primarily going to use on a tripod, architectural stuff. It's really going to slow you down and you're going to be spending more time composing your image. So you really don't need quick autofocus with a lens like this. Being able to control the aperture with this ring and the focus with this ring is absolutely fine. Very solidly built. It's got a little button that you can depress here and rotate it, so you can rotate which direction you want the shift to go in by 15 degrees all the way around, and it's got a little click stop at each 15-degree marker. So if you're not even looking at what you're doing, you know you want to shift at 45 degrees, 3 clicks one way or the other and you've got 45 degrees. There's a little lock pin over here that will lock your shift. You can unscrew that. And then there's a ring here, which is actually very nice and smooth way that this ring shifts the lens up and down or back and forth, whatever it is. The Canon has a knob, which has always worked fine. I never really thought of it otherwise, but I really like this design better as far as being able to shift using this nice, smooth, tight ring. So very nice feature on that one. This actually shifts 11 millimeters. In either direction. The Canon tilt shift shifts, I think, 12 millimeters. I don't know if that's going to make a difference. This is a 20mm lens, though. Canon has the 24 that I've been using. It also has a 17mm tilt shift lens. This kind of fits right in between those, so I'm kind of curious to see what the difference in images I'm getting with the wider angle on this versus the 24 on the Canon. But as far as build quality, it's absolutely solid, very nicely built. The layout and display is very nice on here. All the controls are really nice. It's an f4 lens, which again is fine. You're using it for landscapes, architectural stuff. You really don't need a wide open aperture when shooting stuff like that. It's got an 82mm filter thread on it. If you're going to use a filter for something like this, you want like a slim one, a thin filter, whether it's circular polarizer or neutral density, something like that, because when you shift in one direction or the other, the image circle is going to get to where you may get some vignette around the edges. That's why the lens hood rotates. And if you're using a filter or stacking filters on it, that might get into your image also. So if you're going to use a filter on this, definitely go with the slim. So I'm going to spend a little time here shooting the lighthouse, shooting some of the surrounding areas, and then when I get that done, I'm going to put them into the computer and go through all the images. And while I'm doing that, I'll tell you my thoughts on using this and how much I like it, or all the pros and cons and everything. So let me get started with that, and we'll jump into the computer after, and we'll see how much we like it. Okay, so I found the lens very easy to use. Once you get used to the controls and how it works, you can very easily click it where it's not lined up. So when you're looking for your aperture ring, it's over on the side rather than on top. So you want to make sure it's kind of reset or you know where it is. So a little bit of getting used to how it works, but I found it very easy to use, and it's really solidly built and very nice lens. So I just loaded a bunch of images into the computer. Let's take a look. So this shot here is shot with the Canon 24, and you can see I pointed the lens up to get the whole lighthouse in the shot, and you can see how it's kind of leaning over backwards. You have that little bit of perspective distortion there. And if I skip to the next picture, this is again on the Canon, when I adjust it, you can see how everything straightens out. The actual lighthouse tower becomes more prominent in the shot. It looks a little bit bigger. That's what I did with the Canon. The next image is with the Laowa 20mm, and it's a really nice image. You can see definitely you're getting a much larger image with the 20mm versus 24mm. Let me jump back there. That's 24 and that's 20. You're definitely getting a much larger image, but a very nice shot. Let's look at these side by side. So these are both taken with the camera level and the lens shifted up to its maximum. The lighthouse is straight. Everything looks really nice. The colors are nice. The contrast is nice, especially even compared to the Canon. So digging into the detail here in the center, you can see very nice when you compare these lenses next to each other. Very sharp, nice color. If we want to look down in the far corner here, you can see the Canon is probably a little bit sharper and nicer in the corner here, but you know, it's really not much. Top of the lighthouse here, you can see zoomed all the way in, and this is a 200% zoom, so we're really digging in very tightly here. They're basically both very similar. And this is it. This is what you want to use this lens for. You want to use this lens for landscapes, architectural stuff, where you're going to shift, you're going to straighten lines, you're going to change the perspective a little bit. And I gotta say, compared to the Canon 24mm, it's comparable. You know, you could probably nitpick a couple of little things, maybe in the corners. The color isn't quite the same. The contrast is really very nice, but I gotta say, you know, it really stands up very nicely against the Canon. Now, I'm gonna put a link here on top to a video that I did comparing using the shift effect in a tilt shift lens versus using Lightroom to edit the image afterwards to get the same effect. Definitely check that out if you're looking into a lens like this, because what I found was if you're just using a lens like this to shift, as long as you can shoot wider and crop in your computer later on, there really isn't much of a difference between shifting the lens when you're taking the shot in camera versus just correcting the perspective in Lightroom later on. So definitely take a look at that video if this is something that you want to look into. As long as you're able to back up or use a wider lens, because you're going to have to crop after you make the perspective corrections, really not much of a difference between the two. So take a look at that video. Again, this lens is very nice for half the price of the Canon. It's really nice. But the limitation is that it's only a shift lens and not a tilt lens also. The Canon gives you the tilt effect also. So getting now into the very scientific bulletin board test. I shot both of these at f4. I had to move the Laowa 20mm a little bit closer to get the same framing as it's a wider lens. But at f4, you can definitely see the Canon on the left is a little bit sharper right in the center, but you know, really not that much. And digging into the corners, you can see a little bit more of a difference. The Canon's still very sharp in the corners. The Laowa is a little bit softer in the corners than it is in the center, but it's pretty consistent from edge to edge. Looking up in the top corner here, you can see how good the Canon looks. A little bit softer on the Laowa on the right, and these are at f4. Let's take a look at the same shot at f8. Okay, stop down to f8. You know, the Canon on the left is razor sharp. The Laowa on the right is a little bit softer, but really not by much. I mean, it really isn't much difference there. And look at this on both of them. The Canon's definitely sharper here, but you can see all the detail. You can see the fibers in this patch. The colors all over are very nice. From the edges all around, really nice lens. I'm very impressed with this Laowa 20mm lens. And there's definitely pros and cons to it. You know, the pro, if you're looking at the 24 versus the 20, the Canon 24 versus the Laowa 20, you know, for Canon, it has the tilting effect also, which is a big pro on the Canon side. The Laowa has a wider field of view. It's a 20mm lens versus the Canon's 24, so that has the advantage on that end. Canon's a little bit sharper, but colors, contrast, everything is very comparable in both of these. So if you need a lens just to use the shift effect, definitely look at something like this. Also, like I said, watch that video that I did on comparing the shift effect in lens versus the perspective control in the computer later on. I think you'll find that pretty interesting. So that might be a different option. But for half the price of the Canon lens, this is really, really nice. And even if you just wanted to use it as a 20mm f4 lens alone, it's a little pricey for that, but it's a really nice lens. So definitely very impressed with this Laowa lens. I look forward to what else they may have to offer. I want to check out some other things. And if you're in the market for something like this, I would definitely recommend trying it out. With that being said, thanks a lot for watching, and we'll see you next time.